All right, continuing on with the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab Outstanding Guest Speaker Series, today we are pleased to present Tracie Boyle. Since 2018, Tracie has been deeply involved in the field of investigative genetic genealogy, also known as IGG, honing her skills and knowledge over the years to become a successful IGG practitioner. Now, as a case manager at the Ramapo Investigative Genetic Genealogy Center, she plays a crucial role in ensuring that cases move smoothly through the center's pipeline. With careful attention to detail, she manages case progress and contributes to the center's efficiency by offering support wherever needed. During this presentation, Tracie will discuss the investigative genetic genealogy process, offering insights into methodologies and real-world applications. She'll highlight the variety of programs and events offered through the Ramapo College IGG Center in New Jersey, designed for individuals seeking to enhance their skills and knowledge in investigative genetic genealogy. Additionally, she'll share some helpful tips and recommendations to kickstart your own journey in this fascinating field. So I'd like to offer a warm virtual welcome to Tracie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm going to turn my camera off while I'm doing the presentation because my slides are more interesting than I am. So hold on one second. Let me just stop my camera. Okay. And it looks like my screen sharing is good to go. Okay. So as Sue had mentioned, my name is Tracie Boyle, and I'm the case manager for the Ramapo Investigative Genetic Genealogy Center. In my role, I oversee the progression of cases within our pipeline. This involves coordinating with our law enforcement partners to facilitate the shipment of samples, provide regular updates on case statuses, organize case materials and resources for our students and volunteers, and offer additional support to the IGG Center as needed. I work alongside my colleagues, David Gurney, who is the IGG Center's director and also a professor at Ramapo College and a lawyer, and also Karen Binder, who is the assistant director, who also oversees the IGG Center certificate program. So what is investigative genetic genealogy? While it may be referred to as forensic genetic genealogy or forensic investigative genetic genealogy, these terms all denote the same methodology. Investigative genetic genealogy, or IGG for short, which is what I'll be calling it for most of this presentation, it combines traditional genealogy and genetic genealogy to provide leads and investigative leads in cases involving violent crime and unidentified human remains. IGG can also be used to help exonerate the wrongfully convicted. We utilize public DNA databases to compile a list of genetic matches, enabling us to reconstruct the subject's family tree through a process of reverse engineering. So the application of investigative genetic genealogy in cold cases began in 2017, but it wasn't until the subsequent year that the first breakthroughs were announced. The initial announcement came in April 2018 when Marcia King, once known as Buckskin Girl, was identified. She had been an unidentified homicide victim discovered in Troy, Ohio in April 1981, and she earned her moniker Buckskin Girl from the buckskin jacket that she wore. Despite over 3 decades of searching, her true identity eluded investigators until 2018, when she was revealed to be Marcia King, a 21-year-old woman from Arkansas. The next significant breakthrough, and perhaps the most widely publicized, was the identification of Joseph James D'Angelo, better known as the Golden State Killer. Some of you might recognize him. Operating under various aliases, such as the Visalia Ransacker, East Area Rapist, and the Original Night Stalker, he terrorized California with a spree of crimes from 1974 to 1986, including at least 13 murders, 51 rapes, and 120 burglaries. Despite exhaustive investigations, he remained at large until 2018, when at the age of 72, authorities finally arrested him. D'Angelo eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts of first-degree murder and kidnapping, and he received a life sentence without parole. In July 2018, there was a breakthrough in the case of 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley, who was abducted and murdered in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1988. Despite the presence of DNA evidence, her killer remained unidentified until the arrest of John D. Miller, who later confessed. Miller pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 80 years in prison. Then in July 2019, IGG made its mark in a different way with its first exoneration case. Christopher Tapp, who was wrongly convicted of raping and murdering Andy Dodge, in Idaho Falls in 1996, saw his conviction overturned in 2017 due to lack of physical evidence. However, the murder conviction still stood until DNA evidence linked Brian Lee Dripps to the crime, who then confessed to acting alone. This revelation led to Tapp's exoneration, clearing him of all charges after over 2 decades of wrongful imprisonment. Christopher's case stands as a poignant example of IGG's power to right wrongful convictions. However, his story took a tragic turn with his passing in November 2023, just months after losing his wife Stacy in a car accident. As of March 2023, more than 805 cases have been resolved with investigative leads generated by IGG, and undoubtedly, those numbers have and will continue to climb. In this presentation, I'll be referring to 2 main types of DNA analysis. STRs, or short tandem repeats, are the type of DNA testing used in legal cases and is often referred to as traditional DNA testing. Profiles generated from STR analysis are uploaded to CODIS for law enforcement purposes and are what you typically hear about on crime shows when they talk about running DNA. SNP profiles, or single nucleotide polymorphisms, are used in genetic genealogy research, and the files are compatible with databases like GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. To make it easier to understand the difference between those 2 testing methods, let's take a look at these images. In the blurry image on the left, we can see a yellow moon, white and blue mountains, and blue water with what looks like a shadow. Now, the image on the right is much clearer and more detailed. Now we can see the highlights and ridges on the mountains, a chunk of ice sticking out of the water, and stars in the sky. STR testing looks at tens or dozens of genetic markers. It provides very little coverage of the human genome, but it's great for finding close relationships like relationships to yourself, parent-child, or siblings. SNP testing goes deeper into detail. It looks at hundreds of thousands or even millions of genetic markers. This helps genetic genealogists find connections between close, but also more distant relatives, like 3rd, 4th, 5th cousins, and sometimes beyond. This chart from a journal article entitled 4 Misconceptions About Investigative Genetic Genealogy does a nice job of outlining the basic steps of a criminal investigation that utilizes IGG. You can scan the QR code to read the full article. Step 1 will always start with an investigation. Whether or not there's a suspect, an STR profile will be generated from the biological evidence available and uploaded to CODIS. Biological evidence typically refers to things like hair, blood, semen, bones, and teeth. If there is a suspect, they will collect the sample from that person and do a 1-to-1 STR comparison. If there aren't any suspects or matches in CODIS, the agency will continue its investigation until all leads are thoroughly pursued. Only then can they consider utilizing IGG. That's when we move to step 2. An SNP profile is then generated from the biological evidence from the case and uploaded to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. Next, we proceed to step 3, which involves genealogy. After the IGG practitioner identifies a candidate and shares the lead with law enforcement partners, the agency will proceed to investigate and obtain a confirmatory sample for a 1-to-1 STR comparison in CODIS, or compare dental records, fingerprints, etc. to confirm. Despite sounding like a quick process, this can take anywhere from months or years to complete. The next 2 slides provide a broad overview of the case intake process, which is what I typically do here at Ramapo. While there may be minor variations, these steps outline the fundamental stages that every case will likely go through. Initially, we assess the eligibility of a case, ensuring it aligns with the Department of Justice's interim policy for IGG. This policy covers cases involving violent crimes and unidentified human remains that have been uploaded to CODIS, and those where all investigative leads have been exhausted. Some agencies opt to conduct IGG internally if they have personnel trained in the process, while others prefer to partner with an external IgG practitioner. We typically inquire about the type of specimen or biological evidence available, and then collaborate with our laboratory partners to identify the most suitable specimen for IgG testing. The following 3 phases, extraction, genotyping, and bioinformatics, can span anywhere from a few weeks to several months and are an integral part of the laboratory process. Rootless hair samples typically undergo the most prolonged processing, where DNA extracts derived from an STR profile are usually processed relatively quickly. After the laboratory pipeline, an SMP profile is produced. This file is ready to upload to platforms like GenMatch Pro, which serves as a GenMatch law enforcement portal, and/or Family Tree DNA. Then the genealogy phase begins. That's the fun part. Similar to the laboratory process, this research phase can vary significantly in duration, spanning from a few hours to weeks or even years. During this period, maintaining open communication with the agency is essential. While most IgG providers typically offer monthly updates, they may transition to quarterly updates if the process indicates a longer time frame to identify a candidate. Once a candidate is identified, the IgG practitioner will present the lead to the law enforcement agency. It's important to emphasize that IgG alone is not confirmatory, and arrests are never made solely based on the leads provided by practitioners. Instead, the agency must conduct confirmatory STR testing on the subject or a direct relative, or utilize alternative means such as fingerprint analysis or comparisons of dental records to validate the leads. Taking a minute to go back to the databases, one common misconception is that IgG practitioners and law enforcement officials have access to DNA tests at Ancestry and 23andMe, but that's not the case. Let's look at some statistics. As of February 2024, Ancestry boasts 25 million testers, while 23andMe has 14 million testers. MyHeritage follows with 7.8 million profiles, GenMatch with 2 million, and Family Tree DNA with 1.6 million. This means that Ancestry has the same amount of testers as 23andMe, MyHeritage, FTDNA, and GenMatch combined. For investigative genetic genealogy, we rely solely on Family Tree DNA and GenMatch/GenMatch Pro. Combined, these two databases only contain around 3.6 million profiles. It's worth noting that this number decreases further when we consider individuals who have opted out of law enforcement matching. This is why we encourage individuals who are willing to assist to upload their kits to databases accessible to us. Many people have privacy concerns about the terms of service. When signing up for any new website, it's crucial to carefully review the terms of service. If the terms of service presented make you uncomfortable, or you prefer not to make your information public, it's advisable to refrain from signing up. However, if you're considering uploading to GenMatch and Family Tree DNA, here are some options you'll encounter. When you upload a DNA kit to GenMatch, you'll provide your information and then come to a stage where you'll need to make a choice regarding your kit settings. It's important to keep these two things in mind. All users who have uploaded their DNA data and choose to make it visible to all users are compared to unidentified human remains. Only those who have opted in are compared to perpetrators of violent crimes. At Family Tree DNA, you'll find similar options. However, it's worth noting that the default setting may have everyone initially opted in, so it's advisable to check your settings to verify and make any necessary adjustments. If you choose to opt out, your DNA won't be compared to any law enforcement kits, though. DNA Justice is a new database, and it's the first and only non-for-profit database specifically created for investigative genetic genealogy. Founded by C.C. Moore, Margaret Press, and Kevin Lord, its sole aim is to benefit the public with no intention to profit from law enforcement. Although the database currently has around 750 uploaders, There was only 691 at the time of this screenshot, though. I am highly optimistic about its potential for future growth. Feel free to scan the QR code to visit the website and check it out for yourself, and choose to upload if you like. One of the most significant challenges of utilizing IGG is its cost. For most agencies, budget constraints pose a hurdle as they often lack the necessary funds to cover the expenses associated with IGG. Costs can vary widely, ranging from $1,700 to over $11,600, depending on factors such as type, quantity, and quality of the biological evidence available. Particularly surprising to many are the upload fees to GenMatch and Family Tree DNA. While regular users can upload their data for free, law enforcement kits incur a fee of $700 per upload, with these charges subject to change at any time. The typical cost for a case, or the average cost for a case, is primarily around $5,000 to $8,000, though. The $1,700 would probably be somewhere in the range for extracts or blood cards. $11,600 is more in the range for rootless hair or multiple bone extractions if it's really degraded. Now that we've covered the basics of obtaining a case and uploading DNA to GenMatch and Family Tree DNA and the associated costs, let's dive into the research process. As mentioned earlier, the process closely resembles traditional genealogy, but operates in reverse. We start by identifying and expanding the family trees of the top or best autosomal matches found on the subject's match list using their shared centimorgans. Centimorgans, commonly referred to as CMs, are a unit of measure for the frequency of genetic recombination. Our goal is to pinpoint the most recent common ancestors, also known as MRCAs, shared with other matches. For instance, in our example, the MRCA couple between match number 1 and match number 2 are John Donahue and Margaret Smith, while the MRCA between match number 3 and match number 4 are Benjamin Simmons and Sarah Johnson. Depending on how many centimorgans are shared between our subject and the match, we might go back a generation or two, or start expanding the family tree downward and sideways to find a union couple. A union couple occurs when a descendant of one MRCA couple marries a descendant of another MRCA couple. When we find this couple, it means that they could be the subject's direct ancestors, like their parent, grandparent, or even great-grandparents. In our example tree, the union couple is grandfather Donahue and grandmother Simmons, and subsequently, we explore the descendants of this couple to identify a potential candidate. After a candidate emerges, we initiate a preliminary proof of life search for a DOE case or evaluation for a criminal case. This involves looking through various databases like Been Verified, checking social media, newspapers.com, Find a Grave, NamUs, and other publicly accessible records. Upon completion of our evaluation, we provide the candidate's name as a lead to the agency. As mentioned previously, an arrest is never made solely based on a lead provided by the IGG practitioner. All leads are either confirmed or refuted with a direct comparison between the individual identified as an investigative lead and the subject. When discussing IGG, most people tend to immediately think of autosomal DNA, but it's essential to recognize the value of other types of DNA as well, xDNA being one of my personal favorites. While inheritance patterns vary slightly between males and females, working with xDNA matches can narrow the focus and cut down on research time. For individuals with XX chromosomes, categorized as genotypic females, an X chromosome is inherited from each parent, but only 3 out of 4 grandparents contribute to this inheritance. This distinction aids in pinpointing potential relationships between DNA matches and our subject. In the chart, individuals highlighted in red represent the xDNA inheritance path for females, indicating ancestors from whom she could have inherited her xDNA. Conversely, those highlighted in white signify ancestors from whom she could not have received any xDNA. For individuals born with XY chromosomes, identified as genotypic males, they only inherit an X chromosome from their mother. In such cases, the X-DNA inheritance limits half of the DNA matches family tree. This alone is quite powerful, but it becomes even more beneficial in the case of a male subject, because it indicates that the most recent common ancestor will be traced through both of their maternal lines. Another valuable, though somewhat underutilized form of DNA is mitochondrial DNA, commonly referred to as mtDNA. Mitochondrial DNA is inherited along the maternal line to both sons and daughters, but only daughters continue to pass it down the line. For instance, if my mitochondrial DNA haplogroup is H2A2A, it can be assumed that my child would also have the H2A2A haplogroup, as well as my mother, maternal grandmother, and so forth. Similarly, my brother would share the H2A2A haplogroup, but his children would inherit the same haplogroup as their mother, not his. This aspect becomes significant in some IgG cases, as it can help in ruling out or eliminating downlines or potential candidates when examining very large family groups. However, it cannot be used to definitively identify a potential candidate or rule in a downline, as many individuals may share the same haplogroup without being closely related. Here's a quick example to illustrate how this concept can be applied. Let's say we're researching a Jane Doe, who is likely a great-grandchild of Mary Jones. Given that we know Jane Doe's mitochondrial haplogroup is H2A2A, we can exclude any descendants with an mtDNA haplogroup of U5B2B, which is indicated in black, or those who did not inherit H2A2A, which is indicated in white. Although this information may not be available for every DNA match, when it is, it can be extremely helpful. In our casework, we encounter various challenges, with a significant hurdle being the underrepresentation of certain populations in GenMatch and family tree DNA. While individuals of European descent, specifically Western European, are well represented, African American, Hispanic, and those of Asian descent are not. As a result, they tend to have fewer DNA matches who are more distant, which adds complexity to resolving their cases. Additionally, we also encounter hurdles due to lack of records and documentation. To bridge this gap, Ramapo is spearheading the Latin American DNA Donor Project, offering free DNA kits to individuals with Latin American roots at events who are willing to participate. My colleagues, Karen and David, will be in Tucson this weekend, in fact, conducting the DNA drive at the Tucson Festival of Books. Adoptions and misattributed parentage are more common than many people realize, and family secrets are widespread, especially among the unidentified, who often have complex family backgrounds. We frequently find ourselves needing to identify the birth parents of a match or multiple matches in order to pinpoint a potential candidate. Additionally, we sometimes rely on the cooperation of voluntary DNA testers. These individuals may be descendant of an MRCA couple, but have not taken a DNA test yet, or have not uploaded their data to GenMatch or Family Tree DNA. We will reach out to them occasionally when needed to get additional testers to fine-tune our research focus, whether it's to confirm or rule out a specific family line, or to hopefully find a closer match. It's worth noting that while genealogists typically contact more distant matches, such as second cousins or beyond, law enforcement agencies reach out to closer matches for assistance. There are some practitioners that don't reach out to matches at all, though, so it depends on what they believe, what they think is right. So I hope you gained a deeper understanding of the IGG process today. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Ramapo College's IGG Center, how it started, its current status, and what we offer. The idea was first launched back in the summer of 2022, when Professor David Gurney submitted a priority needs proposal, which allowed the Ramapo community to establish centers or programs to address contemporary issues and elevate the institution's reputation. Once the proposal was approved, Karen Binder came on board in the fall of 2022, and the center began officially accepting cases. Since then, we have achieved numerous milestones that we are incredibly proud of, and we continue to grow and offer new opportunities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of those opportunities that we have. The first being the IGG certificate program. This is taught by Karen Binder and Professor David Gurney, and it offers a comprehensive 15-week remote learning experience accessible to students worldwide. Through a blend of live virtual sessions and hands-on participation in an actual unidentified human remains case, students gain the skills and ethical framework necessary to proficiently practice IGG. I have a QR code there. If you want to learn more about the program, feel free to scan the QR code, or when this is online, you can pause it and come back and check it out. I know there are some other programs out there, but Ramapo is unique in the fact that we actually have cases that students will work on. Then for students who attend Ramapo College, we have an IGG workshop, which provides a 15-week 4-credit introduction to the fundamentals of IGG, which is taught by Professor David Gurney. The workshop serves as a foundational course for students interested in exploring the field further. And this is also taught in our secure IGG lab. When we say lab, people tend to think of a wet lab with like DNA extraction. But for this lab, as you can see in the picture, there are students with the computers. The doors are locked. You can only get in with a key card. So you're not able to access it unless you have the ability to do so. And then additionally, graduates of the IGG certificate program and experienced practitioners have the opportunity to enhance their skills at the IGG Bootcamp, which is a week-long summer program hosted on the Ramapo College campus. Here, participants engage in intensive work, learning to navigate various challenges commonly encountered in IGG investigations. The bootcamp takes place in our Investigative Genealogy Lab, providing a secure environment conducive to collaboration and skill development. And this is the picture from the last group last year. And I believe they worked on 2 or 3 cases and provided leads in 2, I believe, but don't quote me on that. And then we have the Ramapo Investigative Genetic Genealogy Conference, which is the first conference dedicated solely to investigative genetic genealogy. We're currently gearing up for RIG 2024, but let's take a quick look back at last year's highlights. We had over 20 speakers and welcomed 150 attendees, including CeCe Moore, who delivered our keynote address. In recognition of her exceptional contributions to the field, Ramapo College awarded her an honorary doctorate. RIG is open to all, so if you're interested, we would love to have you join us. If you want to learn more about last year's event, you can check out my colleague Karen's recent blog post titled Memories of RIG 2023 and the Countdown to 2024, which is available by scanning the QR code. So we currently have, I think, over 55 cases in various stages in our pipeline right now. We're about to start our new fiscal year, so we've just brought some more in recently. 12 are currently in various stages of research, and we've already provided investigative leads in 10 others. 7 of those 10 leads were unidentified human remains, 2 are violent crimes, and 1 is a wrongful conviction. Only 4 out of 10 of those have been confirmed and made public, but we have provided a bit of an update about the wrongful conviction case on our blog, which we are very excited about. Wrongful convictions are close to David's heart, so we are trying to get more. I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the identifications that have been made and announced. So the first one is for Nogales John Doe. His remains were found in September 8th, 2002, at a hotel in Nogales, Arizona. He was between 49 to 73 years old, 6 foot tall, 192 pounds. And although his fingerprints were traced to a Donald Hadlin, authorities and Donald's relatives believe that this is related to a stolen identity. But surprise, he was Donald Hadlin. This is a family tree that was constructed. I blurred out all the identifying information just for privacy concerns. So in his case, we did have a grandchild match, but then we actually had decent matches in this case, 133 centimorgans, 1,114, and then 105. So his case was solved fairly quickly. The next case that we have is St. Louis John Doe. He was a young man found January 16th, 2012 in downtown St. Louis, Missouri, and it's believed that he may have been traveling through the city. He was a Black male who was estimated to be 16 to 40 years of age, about 5'9", 190 pounds with short black hair. He was found with clothing, headphones, and a wallet containing U.S. currency and wore contact lenses. We got lucky again in this case, and we were able to identify him as Joseph Pierce. He had a very close first cousin match. So when we got the results back, I believe this was one of the cases that was supposed to go to a certificate program, but because the match was so high, we wound up just providing the lead to the agency. The next case is Rhinelander John Doe. The remains of Rhinelander John Doe were found March 19th, 1980 in a field in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. He was estimated to be 6 foot tall, about 165 to 175 pounds, and he likely wore glasses in life and had long graying black hair. So the students in the certificate program were able to identify him as Norman Grasser. This case had slightly more distant matches. I believe the sibling match came in after the case, after we got the identification of him. The one match was 80 centimorgans, a first cousin twice removed, and the other match was 112 centimorgans, which was a second cousin once removed. And the last case that is public was Beaver Creek John Doe. His remains were found August 30th in Yavapai County, Arizona. He was about 6'1" and weighed 252 pounds. He wore a t-shirt featuring the band Widespread Panic, shorts, sneakers, and a backpack. And this was a very interesting case because his matches were very, very small, like they were low. His cousins were distant, but the students were able to identify him as David Jacobson. He, as you see, the matches here were 18 centimorgans, which was a fifth cousin once removed, 46.5 centimorgans, which was a second cousin 2 times removed, and then 31 centimorgans, which was a fourth cousin. The key to this was actually found by one of the students when she was able to match up some of the information that were found in news articles with one of the people that they had found in the downlines. So the news article said that he may have been from Florida or New Mexico originally, and it's also possible that at one point he was employed as a pharmacist with CVS. David Jacobson was employed as a pharmacy technician at CVS and lived in New Mexico and Florida. His license was not renewed, and he had uncollected wages from CVS. The sheriff's office believed that the man's first name may have been Philip, and David Jacobson's father's name was Philip. He then provided statements to the cab driver that believed the fact that he was familiar with the Flagstaff and Verde Valley areas, and David Jacobson lived in Flagstaff. So all these little pieces added up, and the students were able to figure out that he was the person they were looking for. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a minute because I am going to switch over to, actually, can I just switch? Oh, I could just switch. Don't need to stop sharing. Okay. So I'm going to go over some of the cases that we have. Hopefully it's still working. Perfect. It is. Okay. So these are only the cases that we have on the website publicly. We don't list violent crimes because of the sensitive nature of the cases. And these are not all the Jane and John Does either, because so we got a slew of new cases in, and we're still working on getting permission from the agencies. So this is just a handful of the cases that we're currently working. We have a bunch in Arizona, Baghdad Betty Jane Doe, and then we have Missouri Street John Doe, Limberlost Park John Doe, and Ahu Tattoos John Doe. This is one of the cases that we're hoping to get more exposure on. He has decent matches, but because he is Hispanic, it's been very difficult to ID him. I believe his first top match is 160 centimorgans in that range, but they are in the 3rd to 5th cousin range. We have Elmiraj Jane Doe from Arizona, which is kind of out by you guys. Not exactly. One of our newest cases on the website is San Juan Capistrano Jane Doe. We've been trying to figure out her Coach Williams jacket, if it could be a clue, if it's just a jacket that she picked up at a thrift store somewhere. We don't know. So that's one of the mysteries. I believe Karen actually did a TikTok and Facebook video trying to get people to look into that. And then we have a bunch of cases from our area. Some of these are still in the lab, but we did get a couple back. Scattered Man John Doe is one that I'm really looking forward to. The skeletal remains of Scattered Man were found on beaches in South Jersey between 1995 and 2013. Parts of his skull washed up in 3 different points. Longport in 1995, and then a different part was found in Margate in 1999, and then another part was found in Ocean City in 2013. For those who aren't familiar with the New Jersey geography, this is near like Atlantic City type area. It's down south. We're up north in Mahwah. And we have Burlington County, Old Bridge. Warren County foot is another interesting case. A foot in a shoe washed up along shore of the Delaware River. All they found was a foot inside a sock, inside a Reebok shoe, and they didn't know anything about her other than she was likely female. She's undergone testing now, so we're able to provide more information to the agency, and we're going to be having some students work on her case very soon. Harshaw John Doe was another one that just came out of the lab, so we are excited to start working on him soon. And so far, that's all that we have public. Let's see, I'm going to go back to my other screen. Okay. So at the core of Ramapo's IGG Center's mission is the incredible support that we receive from our donors. Their generosity fuels our work, allowing us to cover all the costs associated with IGG cases, reach out to underrepresented communities, and delve into the ethical aspects of our efforts. Thanks to our donors and the revenue from our programs, we can fund everything from lab work to genealogy research through the Ramapo Investigative Genealogy Center. This means that agencies who choose to use our services can utilize investigative genetic genealogy without worrying about money at all. We cover all costs. Another way that you can help is by uploading your DNA kits to platforms like GenMatch, Family Tree DNA, and DNA Justice. Sometimes all it takes is just one match to make the connection, and that match could be any of us. We don't know. And let's not forget the power of spreading the word. Many stories show how a simple share on social media has helped a family member recognize their loved one from a facial reconstruction or sketch. It's all about reaching the right people at the right time. If you're interested in attending RIG 2024 or learning more about the IGG certificate program, please visit our website at www.ramapo.edu/IGG, or you can scan the QR code. For RIG, tickets for general admission with dorm ends on March 31st, 2024. I actually just wrote a blog post about my experience last year, so if you do want to go and may want to think about staying on campus, it gives some good tips and tricks and might help you decide if you want to do so. And if you do want to come, but you want to stay in an outside hotel, conference tickets, general conference tickets, and the sale for general conference tickets end on May 15th, 2024. The application period for the fall 2024 certificate program will close on May 19th, 2024, and accepted applicants will be notified by June 7th, 2024. Spaces for both events tend to fill up fast, so we recommend signing up early to secure your spot. And as promised, here's some helpful tips and recommendations to kickstart your own journey in this field. These foundational skills are crucial for anyone aspiring to be an IGG practitioner. They lay a strong foundation, but it's important to recognize that they pave the way for mastering more advanced techniques and strategies in IGG. So the skills that I have listed here are the ability to identify matches and build family trees using only GenMatch and/or Family Tree DNA, familiarity with DNA evaluation tools at GenMatch and Family Tree DNA, including the one-to-many tool, one-to-one tool, user lookup, people who match both one of two kits, admixture population, multi-kit analysis, triangulation, and segment search. which a tier 1 subscription at GenMatch is recommended. You should understand how to measure estimated relationships using centimorgan shared between DNA matches. Ability to sort and assess matching using chromosome maps on DNA Painter, especially being able to sort opposite parent sides. That's very important. Comprehensive understanding of DNA, autosomal DNA, xDNA, yDNA, and mtDNA, including their strengths and limitations, and knowledge of how endogamy presents in DNA matches, including segment size and clusters. There are a lot of cases that have different types of endogamy, or different populations of endogamy, and it can be complicated, but it's not impossible. And xDNA actually really helps a lot in endogamous communities. So these are some webinars, videos, and certifications that you may want to check out. For media, I tend to suggest going to Legacy Family Tree webinars. It is a subscription-based service, but they have really good quality webinars there, and you can filter by DNA to learn some more about how to just do basic genetic genealogy, which will help with your IgG. The Research Like a Pro with DNA podcast, I highly recommend generally, because they do a really good job of explaining how research works. They do case studies. They talk about how DNA works, and it's very easy to listen to. On GenMatch, they actually have a GenMatch education section, which has beginner, intermediate, and advanced videos that will help you understand how to use the site better. Roots Tech, as Sue mentioned before, that just happened, but right now they still have it on their website, so there are tons of videos to check out there. And then also just YouTube in general. If you just go onto YouTube and you can search about genetic genealogy, you can search investigative genetic genealogy. You can watch cases that have been solved with IgG. There's lots of crime shows out there too now that kind of focus on cases solved with IgG, and you can learn a little bit about the methodology there. I know the Genetic Detective used to be on TV, but you could probably still find that somewhere and watch that as well. Then there are actually 2 certifications that are brand new. The Investigative Genetic Genealogy Accreditation Board is a newly formed accreditation board that hopes to start certifying IgGs by this year. There are no prior certifications required. Basically, they were at I4GG last month, and they were talking about their progress. And I think that they hope to get the test ready for practitioners towards the middle to end of this year. So we're looking forward to that, because that's the only accreditation right now that we have for IgGs, or will have. Just recently, within the past week, I think it was earlier this week or late last week, the Board for Certification of Genealogists, BCG, actually announced that they're going to be doing a certified genetic genealogist credential. So that would be a CGG, but I'll read a little bit from the blurb from the thing they sent out. It says BCG certified genetic genealogist credentials denotes associates who have demonstrated complete competence using genetic evidence to solve complex genealogical problems while meeting standards for using DNA evidence. The CGG credential is open to anyone who holds the certified genealogist credential. So in order to work toward your CGG, you have to first be a CG. So that's the only, not downside, that's the only caveat. So with the IgG-AB, you don't need prior experience, but with BCG, you're going to need that credential. And then I have some suggested books. Sue can probably add this to maybe the library's list as well. So I Know Who You Are, How an Amateur DNA Sleuth Unmasked the Golden State Killer and Changed Crime Fighting Forever by Barbara Ventnor. It was an amazing read. Lay Them to Rest, On the Road with Cold Case Investigators Who Identify the Nameless by Laura Norton. She also does the podcast, The Fall Line. So I highly recommend that book. It was really interesting, and a lot of practitioners that I know were mentioned in the book as well. So it was really nice to be able to hear them get the credit they deserve. The Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy by Blaine Bettinger. This is just a general genetic genealogy book that is just very useful for learning how it all works. Research Like a Pro with DNA. This is the book. And also, again, great book. Then there's Genetic Genealogy in Practice by Blaine Bettinger and Debbie Parker Wayne. Advanced Genetic Genealogy, Technique and Case Studies by Debbie Parker Wayne. And then The Adoptee's Guide to DNA Testing, How to Use Genetic Genealogy to Discover Your Long-Lost Family by Tamar Weinberg. And so I'm going to leave you all with a little homework assignment challenge. If you haven't already, you should upload your DNA to GenMatch and then try to identify an unknown match or two on your own match list by only using GenMatch and its tools. The first match could be someone in a higher range, 200 centimorgans and above, if you're lucky enough to have a match that high. Most of us don't. Then choose a second match that is somewhere in the 40 to 80 centimorgan range and see if you can uncover their identity. This would be a great exercise in learning how to use the website and also test your skills. So happy sleuthing, everybody. And if you'd like to contact us, you can email us at igg@ramapo.edu with any questions, or you can visit our website, which is ramapo.edu/igg. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, so I can take questions.
Wow, Tracie, that was really great. I am so inspired. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to the class, and please unmute your microphone, but leave your cameras off, and go ahead and ask your questions. While we're waiting for the first questions to come in, I'd like to know, just on a more personal level, Tracie, how did you get involved in genealogy? Did genealogy lead to your career, or was it vice versa? How did it happen?
I got involved with genealogy back in 2013. My paternal grandfather, he passed away when my dad was very young. My dad was about 4 years old. So I wanted to learn more about my Boyle family. And I started looking into him. That's kind of what got me started. I eventually I did DNA test. My first DNA test, I think it was around 2013, like the end of 2013. And I got the DNA bug and I started making my mom test, and my dad passed away shortly after that, so he wasn't able to test. My uncle tested for me, which got me more interested because I was able to look at both of their tests. From there, I started helping adoptees, helped my coworker find her biological father, and then I just started helping more people from there. Then in April of 2018, I found out about the DNA Doe project, and I loved what they were doing, and I contacted them and said, can I help? What can I do? And they took me on as a volunteer. So I started working with them. And then in 2022, I started my own business with some colleagues of mine. And then last year I started working at Ramapo. So it's been quite a journey.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next question. If you completed the program that you promoted today, that you shared the information of today, what kind of a career field could it lead to?
So one of the career fields it could lead to is becoming an investigative genetic genealogist is difficult because it's a very competitive field. Some of the students who have taken the course have started their own businesses, which has been great. Some have nonprofits, some have for-profits. Some have gone into a crime analyst position. Others have come up with their own ways of trailblazing their own field. They've reached out to different agencies to see if they needed any assistance with IGG or needed help. So it's not a straight path to finding a career. You have to kind of think outside the box sometimes, but there also are opportunities. I know there's some IGG companies that have been offering positions. Some are remote, some are not remote. So
that sounds so exciting. It's amazing what career opportunities there are now versus 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and how far you can really take your continued education in this field. This is fascinating. Once again, I'm going to open it up to the floor of this class. Anybody have any questions for our guest speaker?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Randall.
The question I have is, I'm with one of the groups out here, and a couple years ago, they discovered a body under some rock and they believe it might have been a native person from over 100 years ago. And the bones or what's left are being held by BLM. And they've been trying to figure out some way of trying to get information on that DNA information to find out who the person is and where they belong. Is there anybody there at your group that they can contact to get more information on what they can do?
I mean, they could always feel free to reach out to us. They can email us at the igg@ramapo.edu email. When it comes to older bones, it depends on what contamination might be present or their condition, because you may not be able to get a usable DNA profile, depending. Also with Native American remains, it is slightly more difficult to identify them because of the underrepresentation in the databases. So those are some issues that we typically have.
Well, we don't know if it's a Native American or just somebody that was passing through, but from the way they found the bones, they say that was the way the natives had buried their their loved ones back then over 100 years ago. And they're trying to figure out some way to figure out who this individual is. So,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead if you had something else to say.
You know, I would, if they want to reach out to us, definitely have them send us an email and we can discuss with them to see if there's anything that we can do to help.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the class?
Thank you, Bridget, for your comment in the box. I just saw that. And thank you everybody else too.
And some of the books that you highlighted in your recommended reading, our library has, along with a list of other ones that I've already put into the chat box.
Great.
So if you live here in Northern Nevada and you're interested in those books, just let me know and I'll pull the books and have them waiting for you at the circulation desk if they are able to be checked out. If they're referenced, you'll have to come into the library and use it. But if they're circulating, like I said, I'm more than happy then to pull the books for you. Now, I have to ask you, I mean, your career is like so fascinating to me. I'm almost like envious. What is the most rewarding forensic case with DNA that you've used? I mean, and that you've obviously combined your genealogical knowledge to solve.
Which is the most rewarding case? It's hard to pinpoint like just one rewarding case. I mean, they all are rewarding in their own way. I think just generally like these people become our families when we're researching into them, and we get to know so much about them and who they are that it's hard to just pick one. Come back to me. Let me just think for a second. I'll come back to that question.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? I'll keep on going with mine if nobody else has any.
I can toot the horn a little bit about that book that you had mentioned earlier, though, about the forensic genealogy book. It's not out yet, but it's going to be called Forensic Genealogy Theory and Practice. And Karen Binder and David Gurney actually are two of the authors that contributed to that book as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
What do you see in the future? What are they projecting as to, you know, where this field is going and what new technologies are going to be available, et cetera, et cetera?
We hope in the future that they'll be able to use less and less DNA to get a usable profile, which would be amazing. The technology is improving every year, and I mean, back however many years ago, you can only use hair with a root, and now we're able to use rootless hair, and we're identifying people with rootless hair. As for, Cece has said herself, she hopes that this will help to eliminate serial killers because it's being used for more recent cases now, as you know, the Idaho murders has shown. And also I think there was the other one with the 2 young girls in Highbridge. I think it might have been used for that possibly, but that hasn't been confirmed. Oh, no, not that one. Sorry. The Long Island serial killer case. Those are the 2 cases that right now it's being used for. So I think the more recent cases that it starts to be used for, the less chance that somebody's going to have a chance to murder or, you know, sexually assault somebody again.
Thank
Now-
you.
Oh, go ahead. Tracie, did you have another question?
No, I just said thank you.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? Give a few seconds here. I do have another question, Tracie. You mentioned that your organization sponsors DNA kits for underrepresented populations. How does funding get arranged for that? I mean, does someone sponsor it?
Sometimes I don't, we do it through Family Tree DNA, so they provide the kits to us. And then we will give out the kits at the event, and then the people test and then upload their kits. It's all like I don't want to make it seem like that we're the ones who take their kits and upload it. We don't do that. We hand them the kits. They do everything on their own. They take the test, they send it off. We just find out later on who they are. We have them put Ramapo in their middle name so that we can see if that shows up in the database and it has been, and we can basically tell if it's in the database based on like Ramapo.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I know there's some misconceptions out there that we're just taking everybody's DNA and then uploading it ourselves, but that's not the case. We do make sure that there's informed consent.
Excellent. Okay. Well, does the class have any other questions?
I have a question. Ancestry.com has the largest database. And at one point, I do recall saying my DNA can be used, and if needed. So is the resistance to use Ancestry.com DNA is because of recent lawsuits? Or-
No, we don't have access to it at all. It's in their terms of service that we're not allowed to use it for unidentified human remains, any kind of law enforcement activity.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only two databases that we have access to are GenMatch, Family Tree DNA, and DNA Justice, which is just starting up.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah,
I remember hearing a news report a few years ago that a young man from Colorado was falsely accused of some crimes in Idaho when he'd been there for 2 days on vacation, and it was based on the Ancestry DNA. So at that point in time, Ancestry said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. That's what I vaguely remember. I don't know if I have it all correct, but it's something like that.
no, a lot of news media gets it wrong. They seem to use Ancestry and 23andMe for everything when that's not actually true. If they were connected to a crime, it would have probably been through GenMatch or Family Tree DNA, but I don't think that would be the case.
This was a few years ago. It wasn't recent.
It still wouldn't have been. I mean, the only thing I can think of is I know that Y-DNA testing, I think, had been used for like the Grim Sleeper case back a long, long time ago. So that would have been the only use of IgG prior to what we know now. But there was never a time where any law enforcement agency had permission to upload to Ancestry or 23andMe.
I have a question. How much resistance do you get from the defense and prosecution sides of a case when you present them with evidence? There is some lack of faith in the prosecution where they're presented with what appears to the layperson to be facts, and they simply say, we just don't believe it. So that may be a reason why some minorities do not contribute, because they do not have faith that justice is being sought, rather than conserving the reputation of a department, whether it's the defense, the legal defense department, or the prosecution department. Justice is not being served. So I think that's a key point why minorities do not contribute, because they lack that trust.
You're absolutely right. There is very good reasons why minorities don't contribute their DNA, which I completely understand. It's just, I said, it's like that catch-22 situation where there's a lot, like the majority of unidentified remains that we have that are the most complicated to identify are those of minorities. So it's like a catch-22. We can't return people to their families if we can't get the information. But again, there's good reasons for them not wanting to participate. The other question that you asked about was the defense. There hasn't been a lot of IGG brought into court. Right now, the Idaho case is the biggest one that's probably going to wind up changing some laws or going forward how IGG will be dealt with in court. But a lot of the cases that have gone to court, the IGG evidence hasn't been actually brought into the trial because IGG, most of them have ruled that it was just a lead generated and it had no bearing on the actual arrest. So it's not going to be brought into the case. But there'll be a lot of things coming up in the courts in the next year, so it'll be interesting to see.
Well, you've given us some good ways to keep up on the topic. Are there any blogs or Facebook pages that you would recommend, if we wanted to learn more about this topic?
Well, there's the Ramapo blog that we just kind of started writing on there. There's not a ton of like IGG specific information out there. There's various places that have it. There's some like articles out there that talk about IGG. There are also some blog posts. There is a program. I don't have the link for that. I should have gotten it though. Tracie Dowdeswell has a link out there that lists all of the cases that have been solved with investigative genetic genealogy and some stats about those cases, which is really interesting. See if I can look that up real quick. Yeah, so if you actually I'll put this link in the chat. Hold on one second. It's for those who are watching the YouTube afterwards, it's genealogyexplained.com/IGG and then -cases. So I'll put this in here for now. And this is the project. She teamed up with Mark McDermott to create this easily accessible list online.
Yeah, I kind of did a Facebook search the other day after you and I spoke, and I couldn't find that many. I mean, I just was kind of surprised.
Yeah, I mean, there's no certain repository. It's basically, so somebody just uploaded to DNA Justice. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, there isn't a specific area to go for all IGG. Oh, there is actually a good Facebook group. Hold on. There is CC Moore's group that you can join. You just get the exact name really quick. DNA. Subgroup. Why am I still not looking? Oh, here it is. I will also put this in the chat. It's called the Investigative Genetic Genealogy DD Subgroup Law Enforcement Applications, but that's a group where a lot of IGG practitioners will chat amongst each other, answer questions, will share cases that were solved with investigative genetic genealogy. So that's probably the best group to go to if you want to kind of keep up with all the happenings.
Excellent. Now, do you ever foresee your program going online, entirely online?
Well, the certificate program is, so that we have that online for anybody. Currently, I think in this class, we have some people from England. The age range is anywhere from college graduates to retirees. It's hobby genealogists, law enforcement agencies, genetic genealogists. There's a whole plethora of different types of people that are there. For RIG, I know we had it online last year, but I don't know if we're going to do it this year online or not. So far, I think the decision has been no, but we still have a little bit of time until we make that decision, the final decision.
Yeah, I know it's always a more personal experience when you actually get there, where you can network in person, and
yeah,
it's a whole different experience when you attend these kinds of events in person versus virtual. But of course, there's always those people who just can't get there but would love to participate.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of virtual, but I know from being at the conference last year, there's a lot of work that also goes on to bring it virtual. So depending on if we're able to, Tracie speak at the Family Tree Conference in November. We're speaking at different conferences. We're actually, so Karen and David right now are at the Tucson Book Festival, and then we're going to be at CrimeCon in June, like the end of May, beginning of June. And then I'm actually going to be in where am I going? New Orleans, the end of this month for the Innocence Conference. So we're kind of going to different places.
This has just been so fast.
I will keep the Family Tree DNA Conference on my radar, though.
Also, there's another big one besides Roots Tech, obviously, which you already know about, but there's another big one in Southern California called Genealogy Jamboree.
Yes, I have been wanting to go there for years.
It's an excellent conference.
We were actually, when we were at I4GG, we actually did a presentation there in February too.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, does the class have any last questions? We're almost right there at the hour spot.
Could I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
The as far as the literature goes, is there a certain year where you would not go back and read the text because they're too outdated? I mean, it seems like the field is changing so fast that you'd want to read something relatively current.
Yeah, I mean, genetic genealogy is ever changing, so it's always best to read the most recent publications. But the older volumes aren't bad either. But yeah, definitely try to read whatever is the most recent. That would be your best bet.
Great question. Anybody else? Well, I would encourage the entire class, if you are interested in taking your interest in genealogy a step further, to consider her program there in New Jersey. I am so excited about it. I hope that you've all taken something away with you today about continuing your journey down lifelong learning process. And if there's no other questions, Tracie, I'll say thank you very much for an outstanding presentation. I was completely captivated by it, and myself, I learned quite a bit. So thank you once again. And also thank you for allowing us to record today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And this has been great.
Okay, and before you sign off, I just want to remind the class that we've got several more hours to go. The Open Lab is the second half of class where we all work together on our family trees. So I hope you will all stay. And if any of you are planning on leaving at this point in time, if there's anything in the chat box that you want, please download it now before you leave, because once you leave, if you forgot about it and then log back in to get the chat box, your chat box will be empty. So once again, if there's anything there, please grab it before you leave, and I'm inviting everyone to stay for the next few hours. So thank you once again, Tracie. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon and happy sleuthing.
Thank you. I'll stop the recording at this point in time.
Don't forget to do your homework.
Yes, I agree.
I'm going to check in with Sue and find out who's done their homework.
Thank you once again.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.